Good morning. Last week we had an exhibition in Parliament commemorating 100 years of women's suffrage in Poland, and it was really interesting to see a movement, a parallel movement to our own on the other side of Europe at the same time. And as I walked around that exhibition, I looked at photographs of about 20 prominent Polish women, none of whom I had ever heard of before, with the exception of Marian. I said a silent thank you to those women for their part as pathfinders for women politicians today, myself included. And I would also like to say the same thank you, but out loud this morning, to Helen Pankhurst, the granddaughter of Sylvia Pankhurst, and to Micheline Sheehy-Steffington, the granddaughter of Helen Sheehy-Steffington, and of course to Mary McKiernan, the granddaughter of Mary Reynolds, for the central contributions that their families have made in ensuring not just women's suffrage and participation in politics, but also as the catalyst for influencing women's role in shaping, indeed in constructing, societal models in a way that was impossible even 30 years ago, but now is moving closer to mainstream. So ladies, from me and from all of us, a very loud and a very sincere thank you. Last week we also had Angela Merkel in Parliament, and I remember a comment she made a few years ago when she said, if a little girl in Germany now says, I want to be Chancellor when I grow up, nobody laughs anymore. And last week was a goodbye tour for Merkel, and she is now handing on the baton to others. And while she has been a huge focus in Europe and a huge influencer for Germany and Europe, she is moving on. And that's going to be my focus here this morning. Yes, huge appreciation for and commemoration of those women who helped to bring us to this point. But I want to look at the future, to the challenges we face, and how we as women must act locally, nationally, and globally to confront those challenges and to find solutions that work. And in that process, not only influencing how societies operate, but constructing new ways of interacting, new ways to literally run the world. Mary Beard, an English scholar and classicist, in her recently published book, Women and Power, a Manifesto, encapsulates this very idea of changing our perspective and hence changing how the world works. It's a long quote, but it's worth making, and she says, I don't think patience is the answer either, even though gradual change will almost certainly take place. In fact, given that women in this country have only had the vote for 100 years, we should not forget to congratulate ourselves for the revolution that we all, women and men, have brought about. That said, if I'm right about the deep cultural structures legitimating women's exclusion, gradualism is likely to take far too long. For me, at least. structures of power. Surely it's power we need to redefine and not women. So in my opinion, redefining power is not just about who has power. It's also about how that power is used and what it is used for.
Yes, absolutely.
So why do we as women not just want to impact on political decisions, but to take political decisions and to take those decisions from a female perspective? From my perspective, rule number one is never apologise, never explain that you take a decision from a female perspective. Not because it is always the right perspective, but by doing so, as a woman, you are simply beginning to rebalance the historical ingrained imbalances and inequalities that are woven right through the fabric of our societies. A recent shocking example in a rape trial was the attempt to use a woman's choice of underwear as a suggestion that that in some way equated to consent. Or a small personal example I had many years ago when John Brennan, who was then a columnist with the Irish Independent, I think, described me as a whinge from the West. A badge, I must say, I wore with honour. That wasn't how he meant it, and he would never have described a male politician in that way. It's not that I shouldn't be criticised, of course I should, but whinging implies a sort of female unreasonableness that really shouldn't be taken seriously. However, many ingrained inequalities in our society go beyond gender. And I personally believe passionately that more women will begin and follow through on that rebalancing. So as I said, it's not just about who has power, but it's about how we as women use it. And some of those ingrained historical imbalances include imbalances between the citizen and capital, between sustainability and greed or just indifference, between individual data privacy and the multi-billion dollar internet companies, between our over-reliance on the growth model of GDP and human satisfaction, happiness or contentment, and that also overflows into areas like insecure and precarious work. So those are some of the challenges we face, and as female politicians, we have to be able to use our power to construct more equal societies. I'm going to look at a number of areas, some where we're making progress, some where we're going backwards, but all through the lens of where women are making a difference or where they must. First of all, we need to reframe how we approach what used to be called women's issues. Childcare, elder care, preschool education, women's health, violence against women, domestic violence, men and women, rural transport, etc. These are not just women's issues, they're family issues, they're community issues, they're societal issues. They are not simply to be taken out of their box every so often, patted on the head and returned back to that same box. These issues are fundamental in equal and decent societies. To give you an example, I am founder member and co-chair of the Carers Interest Group in the Parliament, and I'm really pleased that recently we passed a piece of legislation on a directive on carers' leave and recommendations around flexible working time for carers. Now, those are important steps, but we still have to recognise that caring is one of the pillars of our society as we have constructed. Without carers, our health systems would collapse and our social security systems would go bankrupt. So caring must move from the margins to the mainstream, and we, as women politicians, must drive that change. I don't have time to discuss in detail the biggest challenge humankind faces, that of climate change. But women again must act at local and global level to literally save the planet and its inhabitants from the devastation of unmitigated climate change. We don't call it Mother Earth for nothing. The Earth has a female energy in that it is life-giving and life-supporting. And we as women have a special responsibility to challenge ourselves and others on our behaviour and models of consumption, and also, I believe, we need politically to support those who will actively and meaningfully work to promote sustainability, both at to promote sustainability and climate-friendly policies. One of the most frequent questions asked about the 2008 banking crisis is, if it was Lehman Sisters instead of Lehman Brothers, would we have had a crash? And ladies, believe it or not, the evidence strongly points, as you'd expect, to no. The women in positions of authority at that time, the regulators, the commissioners, warned the Greenspans, the Summers, the Geithners about the insane levels of risk in the banking system. But they were largely, in fact, they were completely ignored. Women like Sheila Blair, Mary Shapiro, and Elizabeth Warren sounded the alarm bells loudly. In fact, back in 2004, Elizabeth Warren said, "We literally as a country have mortgaged our future and we must think about regulation again." However, light touch regulation continued and the crash ensued. Post-crash, there was a rush to regulate at US and EU level. But at US level, we now see a rollback. And it's really alarming, and it's being driven by bankers, and the vast majority of them are men. I remember once chatting to Constantine Gerbia after a Vincent Brown show about banking regulation. And his view was that the only deterrent to stopping the next crisis was to chop off the hands of any bankers found to be creating unsustainable levels of risk in the system. Well, I propose a middle road. Many more women with political and regulatory power to decrease the levels of risk, and above all, to move from the shareholder model, where share prices dictate everything and unacceptable risk is rewarded, to a stakeholder model, where yes, banks make a profit, but have sufficient capital requirements and by their actions restore trust in the banking sector. We need more women to ensure strong regulation, strong enforcement, and that is the best protection, unless, of course, we look at Constantine's model. Now, apart from climate change, in my opinion, the biggest imbalance, and this is the last example I give, but the biggest imbalance in our society is the risk and fact of growing inequality. At EU level, it has remained fairly static, but at global level, it's growing. And it's incredible to say that it's being fueled further by the digital revolution and the greatest power grab of all, our data. But there is one woman who is challenging the tech companies and the multinationals, both at regulatory and financial level, and she's making a real difference. And if you haven't heard of her, and I expect most of you have, she's Marguerite Vestager, the Commissioner for Competition in the EU. Data is the new currency. Your data, my data on its own is virtually worthless. But those who develop and control the algorithms that analyse all our data and basically turn it into pure gold, the owners of those algorithms, the platforms that use information and sell that information, have been called private superpowers. America's 9 richest tech billionaires are together wealthier than 1.8 billion of the world's poorest people. The internet, with its free, unlimited access to information, was supposed to enhance democracy. Instead, it has created obscene amounts of money for internet platforms and has hugely increased the risk of subversion of that very democracy by various regimes intent on creating chaos and exploiting people's fears and insecurities. So you might ask, how could anybody take on that vast web of power and influence? Well, Vestager is using EU state aid rules, antitrust regulation and privacy regulation to take on and challenge their well-planned efforts to monopolise, cut off competition and evade paying their taxes. In fact, evade paying any taxes. A former American Supreme Court Justice observed, "We must make our choice. We may have democracy, or we may have wealth concentrated in the hands of a few, but we can't have both." Vestager understands this and is attempting to force tech companies to pay their fair share of tax. We all know about the Apple decision, because remember, ladies and gentlemen, if they don't pay it, you do. At the time, I had some concerns about her overstepping the mark on state aid rules. But to be perfectly honest, I've had time to reflect since. And even though she may be skating on thin ice, I'm with her on this one. But she's not just trying to enforce tax justice. She is also protecting your data. Privacy, according to Vestager, is a fundamental aspect of being, and online freedom should involve the right to be forgotten. We've all heard of GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation. Some people see it as inconvenient or a further example of Brussels red tape. But it is the most important of all EU efforts to duck the Silicon Valley wrecking ball. In simple language, you will now own your data, not some tech giant. You can delete it, and you can take it with you wherever you go on the internet. Google will no longer be able to build profiles of you, me, and everyone in the whole wide world and use that data to sell you stuff, or sell it or pass it on to others who will use the most sophisticated and targeted techniques to manipulate us and even influence how we think. So, ladies and gentlemen, allied to our recent vote on protecting the intellectual properties of creators and artists, Europe and Vestager is challenging the status quo in a most fundamental way. So, to finish, whether it is how we reconstruct our societies, to see carers as partners and work-life balance as integral to how we live our lives, or to ensure women play a deciding role in financial regulation and its enforcement, or that we support the woman who is protecting our privacy and enforcing tax justice, or mobilising women to help ensure sustainability, both climatic and ecological. In fact, all of the above and much more. Women as decision makers, as politicians, have to be the ones to make and shape that change. I know you've heard it before, but I'd like to finish with Obama's words on change. Change will not come if we wait for some other person or some other time. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the change we seek. And the women we commemorate here today were the change makers in their time. And they and Obama challenge us to be the change makers now. Thank you.